In this lesson, we'll learn how we can start to add things like shadows to our Maya lights. Alright, so in our previous lesson, we learned how we could start to add in a couple of different light types, as well as starting to go in and changing things like the light color and light intensity. Now, let's look at how we can start to add things like shadows to our different lights. So whenever you add something like a light into our Maya scene, we can actually come in and then render the effect of this lighting out. So to render this out, we can do this by just clicking this little button right up here in this upper shelf, this little clapboard icon. That will actually come in and begin the rendering process, where we can actually start to now calculate all the lights, all the shadows, any textures, things like that. So this rendering process is something that is going to be very, very common as you start to get a little bit deeper into Maya. But you can see after this rendering process takes place, we do have things like lights, highlights, some different textures on our objects, but you'll notice one thing that's missing is some actual shadows. So shadows by default do not exist on lights until you actually manually turn them on. So to do that, let's first select our light and let's go into the attribute editor. We can do that by just pressing Control A on my keyboard once this light is selected. Alright, and if we take a look at this light, you should see a little tab here called Shadows. This is up toward the top of the menu. Let's go ahead and select this, expand that, and we have the option to turn on what are called depth map shadows. So if I turn this on, and now go back and re-render this scene once again, give this just a moment, and now we can actually start to see some shadows appearing in our scene. You can see that adding these shadows obviously helps to add a lot more realism to the scene, where now we start to ground some of our objects. We are now starting to get something that looks much more close to what we'd expect to see in reality. Now, when it comes to using shadows, there are actually quite a few options that we have available to us to control things like shadow softness. We even have the ability to use a couple of different shadow types inside of Maya. Now, these topics get a little bit outside of what we probably want to talk about in this course. So if you want to learn more about lights and shadows and how we can start to really get a lot of control over our different shadowing methods, I would recommend taking a look at Digital Tutor's Introduction to Lighting in Maya course, where we'll talk about all of these things, plus a lot more to get you started with this lighting methodology in Maya. So for now, that's a look at how we can begin introducing things like shadows into our Maya scenes.